for Christmas. This was a trip that we took. Actually, we were staying in Disney World, and I wanted a couple places to go. I started looking around, doing some research, and before Christmas popped up. If you're going, or if you're at Disney World, it's a good little side trip if you're interested in history. It's only like 25, 30 minutes from property, 45 at the most, depending on traffic. And it was an interesting little spot. I mean, it was way out in the middle of nowhere. Literally, I thought there was one road that I took a left. If you took a right, you was at a dead end. So it's definitely out in the country, if you can believe that, right outside the metropolis of Orlando. So I enjoyed it. You see me, I'm at the very first of it, I'm trying to wrestle with my gimbal. And I cut a lot of that out because there's some fussing going on at the gimbal. So I kind of cut that out, but this is a good little place. It's got a great museum that you'll see in just a few minutes. Obviously, it's not a real fort per se. It's a recreation, but it is a good representation of an old fort. I've been to several, and this is one of the better ones that I've been to. And they had just reconditioned a lot of it. You'll hear me talk about some fresh lacquer when I go into one of the museum parts of it. And you could, when you walk to the door, the smell really hits you. They put a lot of work into this, the people there in the Florida state parks and the people of Christmas, Florida. It's a really neat place to visit. And I just wanted to remind you that these videos that on the Wandering Rider are pretty raw. They are not edited a whole lot. I cut out a few things here and there for language maybe, and also for me wrestling with my gimbal, but most of this is pretty much what I saw. And the air conditioner was humming in there because we visited, it was late July, mid to upper 90s, very, very humid, and you walk in there and that is a relief that you could hear the air conditioner in the background, and it is blowing some cold air, thank goodness. You can see how shiny those logs are. They had just put a fresh coat of lacquer on this, just about this entire place. And there was not a soul in there except for me and my wife. I'm pretty sure those are recreations. I don't think they leave real arms there for the taking because I saw no one working there. It was just beside the relatively busy highway. Anybody could walk in off the street. So I don't think those were real. I think those were recreations. Neat little place. And I love arrowheads. I used to have a bunch of arrowheads when I was younger. I don't know what's happened to them. I had two good ones at the house that I found on one night. We were coon hunting, and I had a light affixed to my head. and I shined down it was a freshly plowed field, and there was a perfect arrowhead right there. And then about an hour later, I looked down again, there was another one. So it's not very often you're that lucky just to happen across two good arrowheads, and I don't know what's happened to them. I think they're at my mother's house, and I've looked for them, but I just can't find them. I wish I could. The thing that got me about one of those arrowheads is there was a thumbprint in it. You could put your thumb right into it, and you could see where the native that was making it had put their thumb to form the clay. And I wish I had it. I hope I can find it one day. And this little museum actually had an upstairs here that we're going up, and had a stuffed beaver. And had a little video playing in the background. I don't catch a whole lot of it because I don't like to infringe on people's copyrights, and you never know if something is copyrighted in a place like this. So if you'd like to see it, I highly encourage you. If you're in Central Florida, go take a little side trip down to Fort Christmas. But I'll warn you just a little bit about the downside of Fort Christmas. Hello, Mr. Bieber. And I'm really interested in the Seminole culture because they were Creek Indians and Cherokee and Chickasaw and Choctaw that escaped to Florida. And even though I have not found my direct ancestors, I do have Creek ancestry. And I am very interested in the Seminole culture because they were truly renegades.
Connected to where we're at.
There's that little red spot in northwest Florida right there. I live right there in Alabama above that part. A little bit of moss. You know you're in the deep south when you see that old Spanish moss. Some more arrowheads and a spearhead over there. I'm not an expert by any means on arrowheads. I used to collect them as a child, as a teenager, but I'm not an expert in any form or fashion. Osceola. Could you imagine wearing uniforms and clothing in July in Central Florida? I could. Not those uniforms. My goodness. I do good to get out in shorts and a t-shirt. And I'm used to the heat. Just like I said, I'm deep Southern born and bred. But you can probably tell by my accent.
Right. Yes, yes, yes.
Very well curated little museum here. It's one of the better roadside museums that I've been in. It's very clean. I mean, it's just immaculate. And it's got a lot of interesting things in it. Probably one of the most famous Indian or Native American chiefs in the country is Osceola. And in the area where I live, there were some places we called the Indian Caves on P River that I never went to, but my sister and some of her friends used to go and found some old pieces of pottery from the creeks. And this gone to history because I remember seeing it, and I don't know what they ever did with it. But the older I get, the more I wish we'd have kept things that we'd come across when I was younger. I guess everybody does. You don't realize till you get older the value of a lot of things. I love those old trees. And the neat thing about Full Christmas is how quickly it rose from nothing, from swampland to a fort in 7 days. That's an amazing feat. Even though this was either a Thursday or a Friday, I'm just amazed at how empty the place was. And I met a lady and her 2 small children coming to the park, and they kind of trail us a little bit. But for the most part, it was deserted. It was kind of eerie, really.
They just put a fresh
And this is
little
the one.
lacquer on all this.
You can hear when I made the comment about the lacquer, you can see how shiny that is. And you can imagine if you've ever been around a varnish or a lacquer or something like that, it is an intense smell. And that, it would take your breath when you walked in there for just a second. But I'm glad they do that to keep things like this up and in condition, because I've been to a lot of places that are falling apart. So kudos to Fort Christmas and the people who take care of Fort Christmas. And I believe Orange County originally was known as Mosquito County. And that's going to hold true to its name in just a few minutes. This particular part of the little museum there had a lot of old farming implements, old plows and tools and hand tools. And you can see there's a hand drill. Just very interesting stuff, especially if you're into old agricultural stuff as I am. There's a pitchfork down there. Like I said, I'm amazed that it's sitting there just kind of right beside the highway when no personnel guarding it or whatever, no little, place where you pay. It's free to go in there as far as I could tell, and there was no charge when I drove in. There's some other little buildings as you come in. There may have been some people in there, but time was a consideration because we had another place to visit, so I didn't get to stop by those places. I really just wanted to get the fort and the old, what they call the Florida cracker houses. And if you're unfamiliar with the term Florida cracker, it is a term given to the cowboys of Florida because of the whips and the cracking sound that it made as they were driving cattle. You can, you pop your whip and it goes pow, and that is a crack of the whip, and they called them Florida crackers. And most of the cattle that they drove in there were old Spanish breeds. And there's one that where it's a specialty breed today called the Piney Woods cows, and out of southern Alabama, southern Mississippi, northern Florida. And there are very few of them left. They're a smaller bodied cow, that was just right for going through the little palmetto thickets and the pine thickets and the scrub oak thickets of the Gulf Coast. So I'd like to do a video on those one day if I could. I've always wanted to start breeding those cows because they are an important part of this area's history. I love those old trees, those old moss covered trees. You gotta love the South.
Where's that? Say over
It is a beautiful park. But the further I walked in this direction toward the old cracker houses, I started to notice the abundance of mosquitoes on this property. And by the time you'll see me at one point, get my wife to hold the camera because I am in pain, the mosquitoes will attack you as you enter those old cracker houses. So if you ever go there, just make sure you bring your mosquito spray. I didn't. And it was, like I said, I grew up in this area, South Alabama, North Florida. I know mosquitoes, they love to bite me, and they attacked me, and my legs were in pain as I left this property. So just be prepared. If you ever go to Fort Christmas, bring your mosquito spray. You're going to need it.
That's some cool little stuff, though. That's something Bobby would love.
What?
These old plows.
Oh.
It's hard to get a good shot of them.
Some old farming implements.
I'll make it.
I've actually worked one of those old handheld plows there. My dad had one, but we didn't put it behind a mule, even though he tried. We hooked it behind a tractor and pulled it. One just like that one right there.
Good thing is I can just take a lot and then edit out.
Yeah.
The one thing I want you to take a picture of
What?
is that phone booth.
Oh, this number?
Now, there's-
And my wife is very good at taking the still photographs as I'm walking around with my camera, my gimbal. I'm sure people see me as I walk around with that and wonder things. But I do things for a purpose, and it's mostly to
'Cause
preserve things.
that's an antique like anything else.
You never know when places like this are going to disappear, especially with today's financial and political climates. Either way you go, I'm not being political or anything like that, but we just need to preserve places like this. And then, look, you can see the fence around the place. It's just a well-maintained park.
Sugar
And
cane.
this is about sugar cane.
I love some sugar cane.
You can hear me, I'm talking about it to
That's
myself.
a replica of somewhere where they boiled it. Peanut Smith used to do that. Yep.
If you're unfamiliar with sugar cane, it is like a stalk. It looks kind of like a stalk of corn without the corn. And you can cut it and whittle it a little bit, and you can chew on it, and it's one of the sweetest tastes that you'll ever experience. And I had an uncle. His name was Peanut, and he made sugar cane syrup. And I remember them grinding the sugar cane, getting the juice, and boiling it down in one of those big vats. And if you have never had pure sugar cane syrup, you are missing out. And I would recommend, if you're ever in the area, I don't know how far you can get it, but there is a brand out of Graceville, Florida, called the name is Daddy Bucks. Daddy Bucks syrup. DADDYBUCKS. Daddy Bucks syrup. And if you've never had Daddy Bucks syrup on your pancakes, you don't know what you're missing. So if you're ever in the Wiregrass area, look up in any grocery store you can find Daddy Bucks syrup. Daddy Bucks syrup. Get you a bottle of it and try it. You will love it.
There's some mosquitoes out here. I know that. Mosquitoes.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
You know me. There's a mosquito within 20 yards. He's coming to me. I am that. Palm tree.
And if you'll notice one thing about these houses when you go in them is the ceilings are a little bit higher than normal. And that's mainly because of the heat. Remember, there was no air conditioning when these houses were designed. So you wanted a tall ceiling where the heat would rise away from you. And a lot of the houses in the South, especially the deep South, were built with 10, 12-foot ceilings. And that was to help with the heat. Now, in the wintertime, it was hard to heat. But in the South, especially the closer you get to the Gulf, you're more worried about how hot it gets in the summertime than how cold it gets in the wintertime. Especially back then before electricity and any kind of gas heat.
Old mule harness.
I actually own a couple of those old mule harnesses. And I've seen them in use. See the rope there and the hat? That's Florida Cracker Cowboys. And that looks like the hide of one of those cows I was talking about, one of that breed.
That's a yoke.
The Criollo cattle, I think they're called, the Spanish breeds. They were actually called Florida Cracker cattle. Now, there's two strains, Florida Cracker cattle and your Piney Woods cattle. And I wonder if that's the actual people that lived there. I think it was.
Eating me up.
Or some of their descendants.
Yeah, they're landing on me, ain't they?
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the mosquitoes are starting to attack me. And in this area of Central Florida, it's not very good farmland. So pretty much all it was good for was swamps, gators, and raising cattle. And later orange trees. But at this particular time, it was cattle. And you had to have breeds that were resistant to the heat. And that was the Spanish cattle. And later the Brahman cattle became popular along the Gulf Coast because they can handle the heat. I don't like it when I get in my own shot, but sometimes you can't avoid it.
They wasn't in that fort. They eat me
It's
up.
the old broom straw over there.
Eating me up.
My grandmother used to sweep with the old straw brooms like that.
I mean, it's pure hurting.
You can hear me starting to complain about the mosquitoes because they are biting me and it is starting to hurt.
About this house.
They are eating me up.
I think they're in this house.
Jesus Christ. Hold this.
Here, I got some rocks in my throat.
No, just hold this for a second.
I had to give my camera over to my wife because I had to scratch my legs as they were eating me up. And you wouldn't think the mosquitoes would be that bad because there's no standing water. Maybe that there's a swamp down in there. There's a pond fairly close by, but I just don't see an accounting for the amount of mosquitoes that attack me. As I walk right here, there's mosquitoes landing on top of my camera and my gimbal.
Yeah, they're landing on my thing. I'm not going in there. Well, I'm gonna have to be quick.
But I braved it. There's not going to be a thorough investigation of this old Florida cracker house. It's going to be fairly quick because I am in pain. I love that old furniture. A lot of this can't be real. I mean, it's got to be reproductions, but it really looks real. And I own some old buffets that kind of resemble some of this stuff, and they are very valuable. So just being beside the highway, kind of out in the open, makes me wonder. But I just couldn't imagine living back then with no air conditioner. Mm.
Not going to any more of these old houses. This was not nearly as bad as that other one, though.
There's an old gator skin. And I guess that's his head. You know, a lot of people haven't grown up around alligators. I guess I've been around them all my life. I fished on the Chattahoochee River on Lake Eufaula and Lake Seminole, and you grow up around alligators and you know how to deal with them. You know, most of the time you don't mess with them, they don't mess with you. But I can see how a lot of people that's not from the South or the Gulf Coast or anywhere that alligators are present can be enamored with them. I'm really not. They're more of a nuisance to me. But I can see how people that hadn't been around them get excited when they get around alligators.
Nope, no more then. That's enough.
At this point, I am trying to make my escape because I had been eaten alive, literally eaten alive.
2 old houses.
And that lady and her children that were trailing behind us, I'm sure they're being eaten alive because as I was easing out the gate, I kind of glanced back and I saw one of her children clawing their arm. I'm like, y'all are in for it. The more houses you go into. Here's the cicadas in the background. Wouldn't be a hot summer southern day without the sound of cicadas. I think I'm walking faster than I used to do because the camera's really bouncing right here. I'm ready to leave Fort Christmas, especially this section of the Florida cracker houses. Like I said, if you come to visit in the summertime or anytime the mosquitoes are out, make sure you bring your mosquito spray. You are going to need it, and you'll thank me. But one of the best parts about this is those trees. Look at those trees.
You know it?
Just beautiful. And also, if you happen to go to Fort Christmas, there is a free little library right there on the grounds. And if you feel so inclined, there's a copy of Perfidious Tides in there that I left behind. I like to go to places, and if there's a little library and I have books with me, I'll leave them in there. Because everybody needs to read. Everybody needs to know what it is to look through a book and enjoy it. But that's pretty much going to wrap up this visit. I'm going to the car and I'm going to start scratching, and I will not stop until our next destination, which is on the coast over there around Daytona. So it's a little drive from here, and we'll have that video up a little bit later. But until next time, I'll talk to you later. I hope you enjoyed Fort Christmas. And if you don't like to hear me talk, then just mute me out. And that's a wrap.